Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting for Tuesday, April 2nd. We are meeting today on the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation of Squamish, we have an amended agenda in front of us. After this afternoon's meeting, we've added item 11.1, which is a revised motion to send to the Lower Mainland Local Government Association on behalf of our council. So a motion to remove the amended agenda. Moved by Councilor Ray, seconded by Councilor Harper. All those in favor? Motion carries. Any notice of motion? Seeing none, we have first up a request for petition week, proclamation, and the way our sustainability coordinator is here, but Chris Wickham is.
A pale imitation. My name is Chris Wickham. I'm the Director of Engineering. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am here to seek Council approval of the following resolution of the District of Squamish proclaim April 22nd to April 29th, 2019 as Pitch-In Week in Squamish. This is an annual event, as I'm sure most of you are aware. Last year we registered 39 groups at 2,200 participants and disposed of 3.3 metric tons of waste in the landfill that had been out about in our community. So these we have regular events such as a community cleanups where volunteer groups, whether they be neighborhood groups or businesses or other organizations get together and register and remove materials from around the community and the environment. The district participates in a 20-minute makeover, which is a semi-competitive event of different departments getting out around the town and seeing how much they can collect in 20 minutes. And there's an annual fastest picker contest with media, the staff, and university students. And this year we're also adding an educational and awareness building activities around how many single-use plastics are found out in the community to tie into our upcoming single-use plastic ban. And so this is an annual event, and it's already part of our work plan and budget. And so I seek your approval.
Moved by Councilor Harper, seconded by Councilor Harper. Look forward to all of you showing up for a fest. I'm going to have to come back early from the SLRD for that. Yeah. Will you be coming back early?
I better because I'm driving.
All right, all those in favor? Those motion carries. Thank you very much for coordinating this. This is a really important activity for our community. Appreciate it. Any consideration of any unscheduled public attendance? Anybody that feels they need to speak before the next regular business meeting? Seeing none, we have no public hearings tonight. And so we're on to item 8, which is first reading of District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200/2011, amendment bylaw number 2499.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jessie Fletcher, planner with the Community Planning Department. Tonight I'm presenting an application to rezone a lot located at 38482 Buckley Avenue for first reading. The subject property is located at 38482 Buckley Avenue. The parcel is located in Dentville, west of the Squamish Skate Park and Carson Place Park, and north of Howe Sound Secondary School. The property backs onto Wilson Slough, a freshwater fish-bearing tributary that discharges into the Mampam Blind Channel. The property is zoned C1, local commercial. The adjacent properties are zoned local commercial, comprehensive development, and multifamily residential. The subject parcel is located in a secondary floodway and a restricted densification area. It is subject to Development Permit Area 1 for riparian, Development Permit Area 2 for flood. Any exterior works would be subject to Development Permit Area 3 at Universal Guidelines. The building was originally constructed to include 2 3-bedroom suites, 2 1-bedroom suites, and 2 small commercial spaces. Sometime between 2005 and 2009, the rear deck was enclosed and 2 additional 1-bedroom units were added. This addition was unpermitted and did not comply with the code or zoning of the day. The 2005 aerial shows the unenclosed deck as highlighted by the red box. The 2016 aerial on the right shows that it has been enclosed. This was also visible in the 2009 aerial, but the 2016 was chosen for this presentation for its higher quality resolution. There is no building permit on file between 2005 and 2016 to permit this addition, nor would this have complied with the zoning of the day. The construction of the 2 unpermitted suites blocked the secondary egress of 2 of the pre-existing suites, creating an unsafe situation. When the unpermitted construction was discovered by the building department, voluntary compliance, removal of the suites was sought, but not obtained. A section 57 was placed on title, and a do not occupy was placed on the 2 unpermitted suites in 2014. They have not been occupied since. The applicant proceeded to apply for rezoning on December 6th of 2016. The applicant wishes to legalize the unpermitted units. The applicant is proposing to amend the zone to a comprehensive development zone 94 to permit the building's existing density, siting, and parking. The table above shows the differences between the local commercial zone and the proposed CD 94. Key changes include increase in the permitted lot coverage from 50 to 56%, an increase in density from an FSR of 0.75 to 1.09, reduction of the rear setback from 7.62 meters to 0.7 meters, a reduction of the interior side setback from 1.52 meters to 0.6 meters, and a reduction of the required parking from 13 spaces to 4 spaces. The subject site is adjacent to the Wilson Slough, again a freshwater fish-bearing tributary that discharges into the Mampan Blind Channel. The photo shows the rear of the building in relation to the water course. If the application is successful, the applicant will be required to obtain a DPA 1. The exterior stairs to access the unpermitted suites are not built to code and were not part of the permitted structure and would likely not be permitted to encroach into the streamside protection enhancement area, and therefore would likely not be permitted to be rebuilt under the regulations, limiting the ability of the owner to provide safe access and egress to both the existing and the unpermitted suites. So again, limiting the potential for this to be brought up to the current BC building code. If the application is not successful, the applicant would still be required to obtain a DPA 1 for the demolition of the unpermitted suites, working to ensure that no further damage occurs to the slough. The application is entirely within a restricted densification area as indicated by the red on the map above. This is also within a secondary floodway. The official community plan does not support restricted densification areas for rezonings that increase development potential, including an increased permitted dwelling units and floor area ratio. The application would be required to obtain a DPA 2 for flood if the application proceeds. The applicant has proposed a community amenity contribution based on the interim policy at $6 a square foot for additional square footage. There's approximately just over 1,000 square feet that has been added. The applicant proposes a CAC of $6,150. Assuming that due to the age and condition of the building, the applicant would be renting the units if approved, they would likely enter the rental market. In that case, the proposal exceeds the current CAC policy by 25 cents per square foot or $256. The Squamish Development and Project Communication Policy requires that applicants host a public information meeting regarding their development if 10 separate requests are received within the 21-day period that the project is featured on the development showcase. No requests for public information were made, so none was held. On March 24th of 2019, the applicant submitted 14 letters of support and a petition containing 53 signatures in support of the rezoning. The letters primarily cited that the units would help address the homelessness issue and would generate further revenue for the district in the form of taxes. Staff rationale for defeat of the bylaw include the above reasons. The building is currently only served by 3 parking stalls where 10 are required for the permitted structures and uses. An additional parking stall is proposed to serve the additional 2 units, leaving a shortfall of 9 stalls. Additional units will exacerbate the existing shortage. The applicant had initially proposed that 4 stalls be placed in the underground parking. Upon further review, staff note that the parking garage had not been used as far back as 2009, that the grade down to the parking garage was 38%, and the aisle was only 3.6 meters wide, and that the drive aisles within the garage were again too narrow to meet the zoning bylaw. The applicant agreed with staff's assessment that the parking garage was poor and revised their application. More recently, supports have been placed at the entry of the parking garage to provide structural support for the building, further narrowing the entry and reducing the potential for it to be used by vehicles. You can see that in the photo above. There is doubt as to the ability of the applicant to rebuild under the riparian area regulations. Specifically, staff don't believe that the applicant will be able to rebuild the stairs to access the unpermitted suites, as they are entirely within the riparian area. The above image shows the building siting in relation to the streamside protection enhancement area. The unpermitted addition is not supported by the restricted densification area regulations. Furthermore, the unpermitted addition was not built to the code, and its structural stability cannot be confirmed at this time. The unpermitted addition removed the required secondary egress to 2 of the 4 existing suites, creating life safety concerns. The unpermitted addition provides little opportunity to bring the structure to the BC Building Code of the day or provide secondary egress to the existing suites. Staff recommend that council defeat the following resolution, that the amended bylaw number 2499 2016 be given first reading. In this situation, the applicant's path forward would be to remove the unpermitted suites and return to their lawful non-conforming status. Buildings and structures that are considered lawfully pre-existing non-conforming can be maintained, extended, or altered as long as there is no further contravention of the bylaw.
Also, any questions?
Visually from the outside, it looks like there's a vape shop. I thought it was operating in the garage, but maybe that's just where the signage is, or maybe I'm mistaken there. Is that a permitted use or business in that location?
Through you, Mayor, the vape shop is it's a non-conforming use, so the use was permitted when it went in, but since is no longer a permitted use.
No, presumably, even if it predated our rules around vape shops, the building would have been out of compliance with our, these building issues would have existed. So do we typically permit businesses even when the building has challenges?
If I may, through Mayor, the building, the business license was issued for that business, and at that time we looked at the commercial unit and whether the commercial unit meets code requirements. The problem is between the residential units and not the commercial unit.
Squamish Streamkeepers 8 to 10 years ago did some substantial work in the slough, which we refer to as the East Branch of the Squamish, or the Carson Place Slough, and the conditions behind this building were atrocious. However, the conditions behind the building have improved dramatically, so that it's not an issue that Streamkeepers, of which I'm a member, identify as an issue for the slough. The 2 issues nearby in the slough as regards the health of that riparian zone is the Buckley Avenue culvert and the culvert adjacent to the youth center. My question is, if we were to consider this application and the community amenity contribution agreement, is it possible to direct community amenity funds towards addressing, for example, those 2 culverts and their rehabilitation or improvement?
Our current community amenity contribution policy collects amenities and essentially directs them to a general amenity fund. The policy does state that the intention of those funds are for critical infrastructure amenities, and so it depends on whether that type of project would fit in. I suspect that there are other critical needs that the district has that would require that funding.
Do you have a follow-up, Councillor Anderson?
An additional question.
Yes.
In speaking to the neighbors, some of whom have signed petitions in support of this application, a number of them include a number of builders, people experienced in construction. Their rationale for supporting the application is that the owner does intend to improve, in particular, the structural stability conditions of the building. Could you speak in particular to that issue as to plans for improving the structural status of the structure?
We'll ask one of our building inspectors to join us.
Thank
If we
you.
may.
Hi, Mayor and Council. My name
You're
is
gonna
Chad
have to
Blaine.
pull up a chair.
I'll pull up a chair? I'll do that. Thanks, Gary. There are significant challenges, sorry, through you, Mayor. There are significant challenges with the building that were identified in 2014 when we were first on site. Is it possible to do the necessary upgrades? Certainly, but the extent of the upgrades we don't yet know. They are significant, and that is why we recommended putting a notice on title in 2014, and nothing has changed since that time. So it is possible, but there are significant life safety issues related to the structural. To the extent we've got some work to do to find out.
And if I could add to that, related to it is the riparian setbacks. So there are certain questions that we don't 100% know the answer to, which is whether those improvements that have been done in this PIA can actually remain there. So there's the foundation and the building, the addition that's sitting on, and then there's the stairway that is certainly a new addition. So that could have implications on ability to meet code if they're not permitted in this PIA.
Thank you. Councillor Herford, and then Councillor Reese.
Thank you. And when this was constructed, there was not a denied permit. There was just no application. Was that? That's correct.
That's correct. Yes, 3 years. That is correct.
So, the life safety concerns are very real. You said that it impacted the safe exit of the original units. Are those original units still being occupied at this point?
Through you, Mayor, yes, they are. We did place a do not occupy notice on the 2 unpermitted units. The 2 other units to the east or the rear of the property are occupied but are affected by a lack of egress. So the addition was built essentially on the deck of the 2 units to the rear and therefore block the exit from bedrooms, which is a requirement to code. So at present they are occupied, but that is one of the biggest issues we have.
So, would we not, we're not prudent to put it would not be prudent to put a no occupy on those units as well, given that it is a safety concern for those units as well, or what's the differentiation there?
Through you again, Mayor Elliott. Yeah, it's certainly a consideration. What we've been hoping for is voluntary compliance to rectify the situation, and I believe that this rezoning application was part of that. But certainly, yes, it's something that we are looking at presently.
Continue.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm interested in working towards a resolution on this, and I'm not certain that this seems to be the way. What level of consultation has there been between the applicant and staff to work towards a solution that's led us to this point where we're being recommended to not endorse this application?
If I may, through you, this application has been in our hands since 2016. Initially, it started as, well, there was a building complaint. We investigated in 2014. Initially, it looked like the owners, in order to get a building permit, that's usually the first step when we find a non-compliance, we need a building permit. And then that's how we confirm the code requirements. Initially, it looked like a development permit would have been enough, and development permit maybe with variances. So we said, you have to make an application for a development permit if you want to get a building permit. And then when we got more information about what was happening on the site, what was permitted in the zone, it became clear that a development permit, before a development permit could be issued, we needed a rezoning. So we held a pre-application meeting with the applicants in 2016. Based on the information they provided, we gave them feedback, we gave them the information, this is what's necessary for rezoning. That's early stages, and we don't normally, we're not able to tell people or, how the rezoning is going to play out. Since the application was made, other information has come to light, like the parking is unfeasible in the existing parkade. The riparian area implications on whether the structures that are in there now can remain also were called into question, and if this does proceed, that is something that we would have to find out from the province. So things change as we get more information, and it's evolved to this point. The other thing that has come into place is our integrated flood hazard management plan has since been adopted and identifies this area as high hazard.
I have Councillor Race and then Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. And just further to Councillor Pettingill's point about the vape shop, which I understand preceded regulation, but now we're faced with an application to rezone the entire building. Would we want them to ensure that conform with existing zone? Or would we just allow the pre-existing use?
If I may, through you, Mayor, if council proceeds with the rezoning, that could be one of the conditions that are set to bring in all the uses in the building to today's standards. It could be it could be a condition.
Thank you. On a similar line of questioning, I think one of the biggest concerns here is how do we get the non-conforming uses into appropriate standards, both for the two unallowed suites and then the commercial space. And so if we do move forward and defeat this motion, what are the applicant's options for bringing those in particular those suites and being able to daylight them? Is there anything else that they can do from that perspective, or is it just demolition?
I believe at this point, whether council supports or defeats the rezoning, I think the first step would be to remove what was built unpermitted and design in such a way that it would be code compliant. I think that's primary. It's the building as it stands, or the units as it stands. I can't think of a way through that would allow them to stay in their current state and be made, in the building to be made code compliant.
Any other questions? Councillor Bailey?
A couple of quick ones. The CD94, is that a spot zoning, or is that something that we're using in other places as well?
Through your mayor, it is a spot zoning specifically for this, so it is the siting that the building has right now, so it wouldn't be used elsewhere.
And then you made a comment, or there's a comment made about I think it was not allowing more densification in that zone. Have we given variances or made changes for other properties in that area thus far?
For you, Mayor, I don't believe so. So there's different levels of restrictions on densification, and this property is in kind of the most restricted zone from a flood hazard management perspective. Certainly not in this area, and I don't think in others either at this point, but this is a fairly new policy.
highlighted the challenges of parking in this area, and if we were to deny this application, the parking would still be a challenge. Would be under, even if the suites were gone, there's still not enough parking for the zoning. Does that just default then to pre-existing non-conforming use?
Through you, Mayor, yes, it would default to pre-existing non-conformance.
Thanks for your questions, council.
I'd like to move the recommendation.
The staff recommendation is moved by Councillor French. I'll second that. Want to speak to that, Councillor French?
Yeah, I think this is a classic example of how not to build. And we have rules, and we need to enforce those rules. And I think this is a good first step in correcting some wrongs that took place in the past where we maybe didn't apply the rules the way we should have. So I think this action is long overdue on this file.
Thank you, Councillor Riggs.
For clarification, because I got caught up in this before, is this a motion that the application be defeated? Or is this a motion that the application be given first reading that people might vote against? And there is a bit of a difference. And so,
The second one.
we heard?
It is, so you move the motion, which is to give it first reading,
Right.
which is what you moved. We have to give it first reading, Councillor French, and then you vote to defeat it,
If that's your choice.
if that's your choice. So we don't move a defeated motion, we move first reading,
Okay,
and then you would opt to defeat that.
works for me.
So now, thank you.
Yes.
I'll speak to it. So, and I tend to agree, I'm not in favor of dealing with this problem in this fashion. In other words, by giving it first reading or walking it through a zoning process. For me, there's, I'm not happy with how we got to this point, certainly, but here we are, and I just don't see a solution through rezoning while there are life safety issues. And so I think if we're going to consider rezoning ever, for me, that would require these other issues to be cleared up first, which may involve demolition of the offending part of the structure. So I will be voting to defeat first reading.
Any other comments? Councillor?
Thank you. I read the letters that were of support attached to this, and we did highlight the need for rental accommodation in Squamish, and life safety has to, for me, overrides everything else, and I'll be voting to defeat this motion.
I'll also be voting to defeat the motion. I agree that the way forward to fix life safety issues is not through rezoning, it's by fixing the life safety issues. Under our current rules and regulations, especially with the integrated flood and hazard management plan, that would suggest that we don't densify further in this particular lot. The parking is an issue already, and that is on a safe route to school. It's already kind of crazy in that area around school pickup and drop-off time. And quite frankly, people should build with building permits. That is the way that we do things in the District of Squamish. So I will be voting to defeat this reading. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? So, I'm sorry, was everyone hand up for opposed? Because I was paying attention to the councillor first. So, the minutes show that it was unanimous vote opposed. Thank you, staff.
Thank you.
For your diligence on this file. Moving on, we've got first three readings.
I'd like to say something. I'm the owner of the building.
I'm sorry, sir. This isn't an opportunity for input. Next up is First three readings of District of Squamish 2019 to 2023 5-year financial plan. Bylaw number 2673, 2019. Hand it over to Ms. Matthews, Ms. CFO.
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. We are here to present the financial plan bylaw, but I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Russell, who is our financial analyst.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Rather than read about a report that I'm sure you've already read, we're going to bring up a short slide presentation which highlights some of the more salient points of the 5-year financial plan bylaw. And we hope that through addressing that will provide you with a clear understanding of the information that has been provided in writing within the actual report and the bylaw itself. And certainly we will provide an opportunity for questions to be asked. So if you bear with us while a technology challenged accountant attempts to bring this up on screen.
It's just a file. Go.
There we go.
All right.
So here we are. 2019 through 2023 financial plan bylaw review. We're going to speak about in general. This is the budget process which has been followed this year. At a high level, strategic plans have been provided to administration which reflect council's direction. From that, administration has developed master plans, and master plans provide us administration with the scope, timing, and resource requirement levels. From there, administration's job is to convert that master planning information into annual budget plans for capital, special operating projects, and to determine service level changes that will be required to allow us to meet those master plan requirements, the strategic plan direction that council has set for the community, and to maintain service levels that the organization is currently providing to its citizens. Within that, council has an opportunity to solicit and review public input, which has occurred both here at council and also through a public forum. An open house was held in February. Council works with administration to review and refine the plans, and from that we have created a 5-year financial plan. And we are here today to present you with the 5-year financial plan in hopes that council will provide the first 3 readings such that it can be adopted at a future council meeting. With an understanding of this process, we're going to highlight some of the changes that have been made in information that has been presented to council already. We believe that council has received the vast majority of the information with respect to the 5-year plan. There are a couple little things that have been tweaked, and we would like to point those out. First, we'll speak to the general fund. And within the general fund, we have incorporated these changes from our last meeting with council workshop of the March 12th, I believe. The capital plan. We have included the 2018 capital projects that have carried forward There is no tax funding required in 2019 for these projects because they were fully funded within the 2018 capital plan. For special operating projects, some special operating projects were not completed within 2018 fiscal year, and managers have requested that those projects be carried forward into 2019. Again, we have summarized those projects and we have included them in the 2019 operating budget. Again, there is no additional tax funding or no new tax funding required, as these projects were fully funded within the 2018 plan. There was one minor change that was requested by council at the last meeting, and that was to spread out the Human Resources Master Plan over 2 years, so that had a slight reduction in tax requirement for 2019. And lastly, there was a service level change which was requested by council, and that was to adjust the council's conference budget to reflect changes in pricing of both travel, accommodations, and conferences themselves, and to ensure that council had an adequate opportunity to attend conferences that would benefit the community. That had a small price increase from a taxpayer's perspective of $6,000 on an annual basis. As a result of that, we are now looking at a reconciliation which shows the new initiatives requiring an overall increase of $386,000, the net special projects of $257,000, and a reduction in the capital project draw year over year of $166,000. That results in an increase of approximately 1.7% annually in revenue required. So to summarize, there's the total of those three elements. In addition to that, there are changes changes in the existing levels of service from year over year, which equate to just under $1.3 million. That brings the total to $1,757,000 to fund of additional revenue that will be required in 2019. We estimate that the property tax revenue from growth will be $650,000 and change. That's a slight decrease from what was presented to you previously, and that reflects the fact that BC Assessment has provided their latest version of taxable assessments for 2019, which would include year-end supplementals for 2018. It should be noted that that is not the final number, because we are still awaiting a finalization of the Port Authority tax assessment, which we anticipate we will receive within the next week to 10 days. So with all of those things added together, the estimated tax revenue increase that will be required from existing properties is approximately $1.1 million, or just under 4% against the existing 2018 revenue base. Again, there's a caveat at the bottom with a note stating one should not directly extrapolate that to mean that's what's going to happen to your tax, because there are other factors that will be involved in the final calculation. So at this point, I would pause and provide council with an opportunity to provide questions with respect to the general fund.
Any questions, council, on the general fund?
Or we could proceed through the utility fund and stop for questions at that point.
Okay, let's go for it.
Okay. So with respect to the utility fund, we've provided a similar synopsis. The capital plan, we have included the capital project carry forwards. Again, there is no additional funding required. It should be noted that there were some changes in the capital carry forwards from the previous presentation. One, a large project, the Chieftain Tantalus project for approximately $1.45 million was delayed till 2020. So it was identified previously as a carry forward to from 18 to 19. Now our engineering group has suggested that it should be delayed for a year, and so they will be bringing the project back in 2020. And there was an annual carryover for wastewater rehabilitation for $233,000 that was not on the listing that was provided to you previously. It has been included in this listing, and so those are the changes that were reflected in the carry forwards. The special operating projects, again, there were a few projects on the utility side that were included that did not get completed in 2018, so were carried forward to 2019. Again, there's no new funding required as these projects are fully funded in 2018. There are no changes in service levels from your previous presentation. In review of the utilities, the utility revenue from 2018 is $14.56 million. We have added a number of items for changes in service levels, existing service level changes, changes in service levels, special projects, a reduction in year-over-year capital, and a change in reserve contribution. Overall, it results in a revenue requirement increase of $419,000, bringing the 2019 utility revenue requirement to $14,984,000, give or take. So to reach that number, Council had approved in January utility rate increases of approximately 1% for water, 4% for wastewater, I should apologize, 1% for wastewater, 4% for water, and a range of increases in the solid waste side depending on your bin size from about 2.7% to 7%, depending on the size of your bin. Those rates were approved in a bylaw that was presented to Council in January, and it is anticipated that they will generate a revenue value of just under $15 million to fund the utility for 2019.
Council, we just want to draw your attention to the fact that I was a poor report reviewer and the utility rates in your report are not correct. Please refer to these ones.
Thank you. So just wanted to provide a slide which shows some continuity of the changes in utility rates over years, or anticipated changes in utility rates over years. It's fairly stable. We're seeing an increase from just under $15 million to around $16 million and change over the 5-year period. Relatively stable, and we think that that's a good news story. It provides sufficient funding for our long-term planning for utility capital, and would keep our rate increases at a fairly stable and reasonable level over that period of time. And so with that, we would like to wrap up our presentation of the 2019 to 2023 5-year financial plan, and we would be open to any questions that council may have with respect to the plan, and we await your further direction. Thank you.
Council member.
Thank you. I have a question about the project carryover, particularly the one from 2018 to 2020. And with costs rising, like we reflected in the utility funds where it grows year over year, how far is sort of normal or best practices for that, carrying those projects forward, and how does that affect the costing of those, and when do we go back to the drawing board or bid process to execute these?
Through the
Who wants to
chair.
take that?
I'll do my best. I don't know if there is a best practice, but generally, we did have some extenuating circumstances this year with our construction, particularly some of our construction projects. So we consider this year a bit of an anomaly, but generally we do try to carry multi-year projects, ones that are started in progress and that they're just carrying into the next year. We do our best to make estimates, and our engineers and project managers do their best to make estimates and to, but those estimates usually have contingency in them, so there's usually a little bit, particularly with multi-year, that's carried. I don't know if that fully addressed your question, but just reiterate if we do.
No, I recognize there's some economies of just lining up different projects might actually end up decreasing the cost of it. Certainly that might be one of the reasons why a project would be deferred to another time to line up with something else. So I was just curious as we going forward into like our next budget, how all those things interact and should be weighed. So thank you. That's correct.
Any other questions? Councilor Pego?
Just on the 5-year plan, it looks to me like the general taxation in 2020 makes a more significant bump up compared to the previous year than some of the other numbers. I'm just wondering if you could speak to why that might be.
You want me to take this one? Or you take it?
Sorry, now, if I apologize, I believe that I understood your question correctly. Increases or changes in taxation between 19 and 20?
Yeah, the 2020 budget for general taxation, just the change from year to year, looking at that row and then the other numbers, that seems like there's a more significant change there than some of the other comparables, and I'm just wondering if there's a reason for that.
Yes. There is a more significant change from 19 to 20 than there are after 2020, and 2020 afterwards it tends to be a little smoother. One of the reasons for that, or probably the largest driving reason for that, is that in 2020 we have a fairly large capital plan anticipated for the general fund, and so there is a significant increase in the tax draw from, so direct payment from the general fund to fund capital. So in 2019, that number is $1.6 million. In 2020, it increases to just over $3 million. So there's about a $1.5 million increase in draw for capital against the tax levy. And that is what's driving the very significant jump in the first year, or between years 1 and 2. And then after that, the number of the capital draw is fairly stable around $2.5 million per year. So I think that if you went back and looked at it, 2018, 2019 might have been a little lighter than the draw have been in some other years, and I think that it's jumping up in 2020 because there's a very heavy capital plan in 2020.
And just so I can clarify a bit further, so that doesn't mean then the taxpayer, even though it's coming from the general taxation account, we're not going to be asking the taxpayer for a bigger amount in 2020, or are we?
If you approve the 5-year financial plan bylaw, it confirms the 2019 budget. It lays out a structure and a plan for 5 years, because that is the requirement of the government. It does not commit council to any specific tax value beyond the first year. Okay, part 1. Part 2, this is where you're going to review and decide the total revenue requirement within the financial plan. And then subsequent to that, administration will present a tax bylaw, which would then convert that tax requirement or tax revenue requirement into an actual mill rate based on assessment. So it's a multi-step process, part one, for a 5-year plan, but we would only be asking, administration's only asking council to commit to the taxes for year one, okay? So yes, we see a large jump between years 1 and 2, but before 2020, administration will go through this process again, because we like it. And we'll come back with a new budget and a new 5-year plan, and council will give us their recommendations and make adjustments accordingly. So if I don't know what's going to happen because I don't have a crystal ball. If council believes that that jump is too high, or they believe that the capital plan is too aggressive, then they will direct administration to adjust it accordingly, and that will be reflected in the revenue requirement in 2020.
Does that answer your question? Great. Any other questions? Anybody want to move first 3 readings of our financial plan and bylaw? Moved by Councilor Riggs. Seconded by Councilor Stoner. Any comments? I would, okay, go. Councilor Riggs.
Well, thank you. I mean, this is one of those moments each year in our council term that I think almost deserves a comment. There's a lot of work from staff that goes into this to getting council to this point, and so I want to acknowledge that. I have to say it seems to get a little bit smoother each year. I think we refine the process a little bit.
Is he in his 4th term?
Eventually I'll get the hang of it, yeah. But, so I do want to acknowledge that, and thank you for the work you've done to get us to this point.
I want to thank council, because we have 5 new members of council, and it's a little bit of a strange beast the first time we go through it, and it does take a year to year, but I think our new council members did a great job through the process. I actually want to acknowledge staff, because behind the scenes, we were going through a whole technology transformation, and we had a new financial analyst join the team right in the middle of this, so I recognize there was more on your plates than just helping us with the budget process, and I think it went very smoothly. So I appreciate the effort that went into this on the staff side.
Thank you.
I'm happy to support this financial plan. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 9, we have one staff report on the 2019 annual water main upgrade project tender report. Back to you, Mr. Rico.
Thank you. And I would like to introduce John Allen, who is one of our engineering technicians and is responsible for our water program. We'll be presenting this tender award request.
Thanks. As Chris mentioned, my name is John Allen. I'm an engineer technician. I didn't do a presentation, so if I'm speaking too quick, let me know. I'm from Newfoundland. It can happen. So tonight I'm in front of you to seek council approval for the award of tender for the 2019 annual water main upgrade project to Coast Valley Contracting, and that mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the agreement. The water main upgrade project is an annual program aimed at ensuring that the district's water main infrastructure is maintained and upgraded in order to meet the needs of community. Projects are typically selected and prioritized from the water capital plan and from public works staff feedback. This year's program consists of 3 sites. The first is at Diamond Head Road. We're replacing an old water main, which will improve fire flows and decrease maintenance. It's been a bit of an annoying water main the past couple of years. We've had a couple breaks, and We're coordinating this year with the annual paving program to get that job done. Second site is at Garibaldi Avenue, which is highlighted in the water master plan as a high priority. We're going to be completing the looping from the water main to Britannia Avenue, which is improving fire flow volumes for the community and will help development down the way. The third project is at the intersection of Highway 99 and Squamish Drive. We're completing a pretty simple connection, which will effectively allow us to abandon almost a kilometer of unserviceable water main just off Highway 99. This tender was posted on BC Bid as per the district's purchasing policy, and upon closing we received 5 bids, and the lowest was from Coast Valley Contractors at $819,000. And this is a unit price contract, so the final project value can vary quite a bit, but we've set a cap at $1.1 million. These projects will be touching on 2 of Council's priority areas, the first being planet and environment. The deteriorated water main at Diamond Head Road and lack of looping at Garibaldi have been a consistent cause of water main breakage, leaks, and maintenance. This 2019 scope will help address those issues. And the second, we're going to be stimulating local businesses and jobs by providing well-paying technical jobs within the community. To summarize, I'm asking Council to approve the award of this tender to Coast Valley Contractors. With acceptance of this tender, work will start in May and continue through the summer. And as I mentioned, the work on Diamond Head Road is going to be coordinated with the paving program. So it's going to be a busy summer out there. And I'll pass it along to you guys now for questions.
Yeah, sorry to the folks on Diamond Head Road.
Yeah.
But it'll turn out better in the end. That's a trend.
Yeah, I'd like to know who has the contract in this current year. Is it this same company or is it somebody else?
Through the mayor, no, it's a different contractor.
And Coast Valley came in with the lowest bid.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the only factor in determining, or were other factors taken into account?
Yes, that's the only factor we consider as lowest price.
Mr. Wickham would like to just highlight some of those purchasing regulations that we have.
Yeah, I think that's a really important difference between an RFP and a tender, the 2 major tools that we use for these sort of larger contracts. For an engineering contract, for example, we use a scoring matrix that cost is part of it, and there are other items to get best value overall. When it comes to a construction tender, we're limited to lowest compliant bid. We use the Master Municipal Construction Documents methodology, where we put out a standardized contract on the street, which is the tender. That's where we're actually entering into a contract the moment we put out a tender on a BC bid. And then the lowest compliant bid gets the contract. And so as long as they're compliant, that's the way it goes.
Thank you.
Yes, I wonder if you might clarify more precisely the location of the Highway 99 Squamish Drive water main project, and which industrial properties or activities would it service. I guess I'm looking to, we have nearby a very large industrial area that is in need of servicing over time. It's, and I just wonder if you could clarify just on the map for us where this location is.
Yes, sure. Through the mayor, this industrial area is serviced by the 6-inch line that we're planning to abandon. So right in that intersection of Highway 99 and Squamish, that's where we're going to be doing the work, and that industrial yard will be serviced from the new connection, which is will provide higher fire flows and flows to that industrial usage.
So to clarify then, the industrial areas are on the south side of the Squamish River at the Site B log handling area and the immediate private land, Squamish Nation and other owners there. That's
Yes.
the industrial area you're referring to.
Yes.
Keep going.
If I may, I'd like to add another comment. You referred to the jobs or the economy and local jobs in our council strategic plan. But I would just like to acknowledge that I think that this statement that you have in our report is exceptionally well crafted and thoughtful. And I'd like to read it out. This work requires technical work in Squamish to complete and thereby encourages diverse, well-paid jobs in our community and potentially supports growing businesses within this community. I haven't seen it quite expressed that way in a report hitherto, and I just thought that it deserved mention. It's a very nice statement. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Rice?
Thank you. But first, let me say, you don't have such a bad accent. I understood everything you said.
Excellent.
And this is maybe perhaps more for Mr. Wickham. It's a little bit off topic, but we started on this program of replacing the existing water pipes back in my first term, almost 10 years ago now. And I was just curious, at the time we were told it was approximately a 20-year program. And I'm wondering, Mr. Wickham, if you could just ballpark it. I'm not looking for an exact number, but are we more or less halfway through that, or are we?
Through the mayor, I'm not sure what the answer is as far as percentage. I know that we're on schedule. Like when we're looking at the items, we've completed all of the highest priority, which gives us the ability to do things like Diamond Head, which actually wasn't in the plan, but in the last few years has become a major problem, and so we can fit that into the program. So I could only say that if 10 years ago it was a 20-year program, we're probably about halfway through. But we are on schedule. When we go through the water master plan and we look at the dates that everything is supposed to be done, we're hitting those dates.
Thank you.
Councilor. Oh, Councilor Anderson.
Thank you. Just back to the Site B area, one of the issues there is fire protection. With log handling, we have had fires at log sorts in the past. I just wanted to touch base with you that the capacity of the infrastructure you're proposing to install will consider that this may have some major facilities in future with some potential fire risk given the fact they're working with wood and wood wastes and so on.
So we're improving the flow.
We're servicing with the new tank.
If I understand the question, we are abandoning some old line, which is a good thing. We're able to meter this connection now, which is a good thing. And we will be probably increasing the fire flow somewhat. That's not our primary intent here. If there are new facilities going into that area, just with any other building or development, they would have to look at the fire flow required for that new development and upgrade if required. So this may improve their chances on not having to do an upgrade for future development, or it might not. I can't comment on that.
It will depend on the development in the location, Councilor Anderson.
I can add to that. Through the mayor, the new connection will be abandoning a 6-inch and giving a 10-inch. So anything on site would be the responsibility of the developers and anyone on site. So I'm pretty sure right now they have a 2-inch, but we have a 10-inch connection to them. So if they wanted to improve their own, it would be the responsibility of them down the line.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Council, someone will move that. Moved by Councilor Rice, second by Councilor Stoner. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda has minutes in it. It also has correspondence in it. So if you want any of that pulled for discussion, speak now. Councilor Peck.
This time just number 7, please.
Just number 7? That's the Portfolio Pace program?
Yes.
I'll be pulling number 1. Oh, Councilor Stoner pulls number 1. I'll let her do that.
Number 4, please.
Okay. So those would move to 12, 6. Yes. So we'll deal with those letters as item 12.6. Motion to approve the consent agenda, moved by Councilor Ray, second by Councilor Stoner. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Late item agenda. So here is our new motion for the Lower Mainland Local Government Association, which is discussed at committee of the whole this morning. Those little question marks you see there were supposed to be centigrade, not question marks. We know that those numbers are 3 and 1.5. I'm not going to read it all out, but basically, maybe I'll ask Councilor Pettengill to speak to this one, if you're a motion.
Sure, thank you. So we had, this is a motion that we developed a couple weeks ago. I worked on it with Christine Boyle from the Vancouver City Council, and she's the individual that put forward the motion that her council unanimously adopted, acknowledging a climate emergency. And so we worked on that with her to tweak it for the LMLGA. We had some feedback from the LMLGA on some changes they would like to see. I had some further conversations with Christine, and earlier today we sort of all that feedback and brought it all together and essentially stripped out a lot of the whereas clauses. A lot of our actual resolutions stayed fairly consistent, and very pleased to have the support of the council on this, and thank everyone for that.
County too, that were commissioner reported that Canada is not doing enough on climate change for that. And also a report coming out that we are warming up in the province of British Columbia even faster than the rest of the country. So we will see the effects sooner along with prairies than the rest of the country. So thank you for working with Councilor Boyle on this. And it'll be great to see it pass at LMLGA. All those, so moved by Councilor Pettengill, seconded by Councilor Stoner. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Right, we get to do some talking at the Lower Mainland LGA. Okay, so now we have correspondence action requested. That the correspondence received from B. Grains dated March 15th regarding moorage be referred to the manager of real estate services for follow-up. Moved by Councilor French, seconded by Councilor Anderson. And you want to speak to that, Councilor Anderson?
Yes, I do, please. I'd like to offer an amended recommendation. That is that the matter, as is stated here, be referred to the manager of real estate services for follow-up, and also to planning department, and specifically the Marine Action Strategy coordinators. The reason for that I can speak with now if you'd like, Rick.
You have to get someone to second your amendment.
Yeah.
Seconded by Councilor Rice. Can you speak to it?
Thank you. So I've met with Mr. Grains, and we've done a tour of the waterfront together, and he's been here 10 years and has substantial experience to offer, and observations and circumstances to relate to the Marine Action Strategy, as well as real estate department. The Marine Action Strategy has a set of focus areas, and in 2 of these areas, Mr. Grains' operations and circumstances relate to, and his issues are not quite captured in the Marine Action Strategy identified issues. I think that while I'm not suggesting that the planning department follow up with Mr. Grains, I think that his issues in his letter should be brought to their attention. And perhaps when the implementation process is underway, they can follow up with them at that time. But my recommendation is that the planning department be added to the referral.
So council will vote first on the amendment. So on the amendment, which is to also refer it to planning staff for the MAST for consideration during the MAST implementation. Does everybody understand that? You're looking at me like, yeah, okay, we're good. All those in favor? Opposed? The amendment carries. So now on the amended motion. I don't have to move that. No. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There we go. We got it done, Councilor Anderson.
Thank you.
Next one. Oh yes. Okay, I remember this one. We received a letter from G. Sosnowski, on behalf of the Bonneville Mayor on the coalition of municipalities that are working to provide input to Bill C-69. Now, this letter came with a $1,000 price tag, so it's actually, the letter is not from the Mayor of Bonneville, it is from a consultant firm that does advocacy or lobbying. And so to join this group, you would pay $1,000. So it is on the agenda for your consideration, or you can just read Bill C-69 and provide your own input to the process, or we could do that as a council without paying $1,000. We can just move to receive. Move to receive, moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Rains. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next one is from Edith Toad, Squamish River Watershed Society, a funding request for the estuary master planning process. So this came out of the discussion that Councillor Race and I attended. And so the recommendation is that the correspondence be referred to a future committee of the whole for discussion, which would provide Councillor Race an opportunity to provide a fulsome report from that meeting, and also give us a chance to figure out the best way forward on this. Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Hooper.
I'll just speak briefly. I'm not going to discuss the whole thing tonight, but I think what has become apparent is that this project could or should perhaps expand significantly. It can become quite a significant project, and so it's certainly, I think there's more discussion to be had to scope this thing out properly. In the district, I think because the district will inherit any infrastructure that changes, the district, I think, is going to have to be quite involved in this as it goes along. So we're referring it now for more discussion. That's the motion.
I have a quick question on that, just with regards to the timing of their request for that $50,000 come from the 2019-2020 budget, which we are very close to finalizing if we haven't just done so. So are they okay if we postpone that conversation to a committee of the whole and what that looks like?
I have had a conversation with Edith Tobe, and I think that we can have a fulsome discussion in committee of the whole and the best way forward, and whether there's short-term funding that through them, through us. I think it deserves a broader conversation when we have the time and the staff and the organization at the table to make that happen. So they're aware that tonight we were giving 3 readings to our financial. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Correspondence received from P. Henry dated March 21st regarding Bailey Street traffic and request for a speed bump be referred to the Director of Engineering for response. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor French. Councillor Anderson. Did you want to speak on it?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Sometime back in November, when an issue came up, I believe it was regarding the paving budget, this road came up in discussion. It was pointed out that, of course, it's not a district-owned road, and the site in front of Mr. Henry's residence may not be owned by the district, owned by the DCR properties. However, we do have arrangements elsewhere where we make improvements to roads that aren't owned by the district, and Berger Drive is an example. I just wanted to make the observation that the ownership of this road and improvements to this road is a long-standing discussion, and there was at one time a joint planning committee, district and BC Rail Properties, and so that the ownership issue isn't black and white. There's lots of nuances there, and hopefully we can strike a solution for the safety and comfort of the residents in the neighborhood of that road.
We'll refer to you, Mr. Wickham. Did you move and second that? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Correspondence from John Patterson dated March 21st. We refer to Public Works Department for a response, and that is forest tree removal on the deck. So we cut it down and left it there. Maybe that's a fire hazard. Councillor Herbert. Moved by Councillor Herbert, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so now we get to do the letters that everyone pulled. So Councillor Stoner, you get letter number 1.
Yeah, I was going to move that this be referred to Shannon White, Sustainability Coordinator, for consideration of her inputs.
Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Ranks. Any discussion? I was curious to see if anyone was going from staff because the circular economy and zero waste was part of our smart cities submission. So happy to support this motion. All those.
I'm curious to know if any council members are planning to go to this conference. I'm not, it doesn't fit in my schedule.
You all have your budgets. We'll leave it at that. All those in favor? All those motion carries. Okay, correspondence regarding the Smoke Bluffs Park East Side Trail. That was moved by Councillor Herford. Cole.
Yeah, I'd just like to have a discussion about the correspondence we received there, and perhaps I can have some recommend that. Of course, maybe we can go through the course of action. Basically, the correspondence coming through the regarding the Smoke Bluffs Park, the East Side Trail, seems is very concerning to me, particularly Nicholas Gottlieb, maybe is how we say that. Well, I butchered it. He had so much as far as overlaying the route and the maps. It seems to greatly deviate from what the plan was, and I wonder how this happened because, and I wonder what our mechanism is to find some answers there. I think that as a whole, our community is very good at handling these multi-user interfaces and trails, and I haven't seen something quite like this ever in a machine-built planned trail. So I don't know if we leave Smoke Bluff Park Committee to address those concerns, or if there's something else that we should be doing. But generally, a new trail in our community is generally celebrated because it's executed through planning and executing those plans as committed. And that's not what I'm seeing here without all the information in front of me, or with the information that I have. So I'm open to suggestions about what a step could be that we could help facilitate a solution there.
I know in Mr. Buckton's response to these letters that he said that the committee would be coming together, Smoke Bluffs Park Committee, to discuss. Is that correct, Mr. Buckton?
It's probably the only item on the agenda for the April 18th meetings.
So,
So we'll get the minutes from that, and Councillor Anderson sits on that committee, and so I would expect a wholesome report back.
could we pose specific questions at this time that we would like to answer to that? At that, or should we just, or would we just await the outcome of that meeting?
If a councillor has a question, I can certainly pose that to me or answer it tonight if I know the answer.
Well, the construction seems to vary from the, according to some accounts, having not been there and not seen the planned line through the forest, but there's the trail alignment laid out in the planning doesn't seem to be what was executed, and also seems to be have gone quite a bit further than the first phase was. So I'm wondering who authorized the changes, and some of the letters seem to indicate that even the initial line maybe didn't have the correct consultation and associated with it. So yeah, I have questions surrounding that, and it all seemed to happen quite fast, which just seems the fastest.
Well, the direction to perform the work was provided by district staff to the contractor that we engage. Based on a conversation at the last committee meeting, which doesn't appear to have been recorded in the minutes, I haven't seen the video yet, it wasn't posted, so I haven't been able to check. But I recollect the conversation happening towards the end of the meeting. It's been on the to-do list for quite some time, that trail. The alignment, I think the trail builders respected that as best they can. It's always a field fit. Did they go a little further than we anticipated? Yes. Yes, they did. There was ambiguity in the direction provided. There was some ambiguity about the direction that came out of the meeting. Was our consultation robust? Could it have been better? Quite possibly, yeah. But the direction to perform the work was given by district staff following the last meeting.
With those alignments being so sensitive to safety and just sort of interacting with different user groups, the execution of these projects just goes to, this has such a great effect on the relationship between user groups, whether that alignment sends a rider at speed down hike purpose-built hiking primary trail, or however you want to call it. So to me, each of those intersections represents an opportunity to be safe and harmonious, and that doesn't seem to be what's been executed here. So I don't know how much free rein we've given to was given to the contractor or maybe the committee to allow the deviation from the plan, but I think that I don't know. I think there's.
So I think
it seems like a mess. How do we
I'm gonna recommend that we allow the committee to do their work to assess what went right and what went wrong with their process here, and that the intent was always good. As Mr. Buxton said, this trail's been on their list of to-dos for a long time. Could have been executed, I think, a little bit better, but let's let them do the post-mortem on this and give them the opportunity to fix it rather than dissecting it here, because the 7 of us have not been, Councillor Anderson, have not been at that table. And so I think we need to allow this to be discussed at that level. And if we're still not satisfied, or we continue to receive complaints from the public, once steps are taken to finish the trail and address the concerns raised in the letters, then I think we can bring it back to council. But I think it's appropriate to allow this to go back to the Smokebox Park Committee, which does represent many user groups, and have the opportunity to discuss themselves. I know your concerns. I'm not saying they're not valid, but we would be speculating here at this table because we don't have all the people at this table.
Yeah.
Mr. Rustin?
All of the folks that wrote the email addresses, they've all been invited to that meeting. Scheduling's a little tricky. Some can make it, some can. It's a public meeting. You can watch online. You can attend. Any of the councillors can attend if you want to. So I'm sure there'll be a robust discussion.
So do we move receipt on those letters?
Receipt.
Yes. Moved by Councillor Burke, seconded by Councillor French. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, letter number 4 is the garden waste pickup, and that was moved by Councillor Anderson?
Yes. This represents the 4th letter we received on this topic in my memory. One would go back a year or so from Mrs. Shirley Rutherford, and more recently now Mr. Caldwell sent a 2nd letter, and Tony Worth. All happen to be active gardeners and members of the gardening club. My mother threatens to write a letter on this topic, and I encourage her not to. However, I would like to encourage a future discussion on this topic, in particular how or how not we may be able to reorganize the weekly organics pickup schedule to avoid budget increases. This has been the sympathy of each of the letter writers. Now, our staff member Shannon White did reply to Mr. Caldwell in January. This was following our discussion on December 18th on this topic. And Ms. White adds some useful information that we did not consider during our exchange. And in fact, on the December 18th presentation from the engineering department, there was some information that was just on our screen that I happened to capture that I find very interesting and perhaps deserving of additional conversation. And my suggestion is that this topic isn't going to go away, that it deserves ongoing attention, not only to satisfy citizens, and particularly active people actively managing their properties, which is something that we should encourage, but in the context of our waste management. And it's my understanding that engineering department will be coming forward to council in the next couple of months concerning the landfill, and if so, perhaps we might encourage them to revisit this topic with some of the information presented in Shannon White's letter to Mr. Caldwell, Shannon White's letter of January 3rd, and some of the slides that we saw in December to wrap our heads around or have a fuller discussion about the opportunity to, or whether there is an opportunity to adjust the pickup schedule to, in particular for the fall, without any budget increase.
So you would like to refer this letter to Ms. White?
Yes, and with consideration to an opportunity, not an urgent one, but when engineering department comes again and Ms. White, sustainability coordinator, to present on solid waste issues, that perhaps we might devote some of that discussion to this topic.
Moved by Councillor Anderson, second by Councillor French. Any further discussion? Councillor French?
Yeah, I too have had a fair amount of feedback on this topic, and lots of homeowners asking that we offer more pickups of organic materials. And while Eric is discouraging his mother from writing a letter, I might encourage my parents, who are also garden club members, to write their own letter, consistent with the request of Mr. Caldwell and Mr. Worth and various other people who have asked for an increase in organic pickup service. It certainly, for those who have large yards in areas like Garibaldi Highlands, Garibaldi Estates, and some areas of Hospital Hill, Brackendale, other areas with large lots, it is very difficult to dispose of the waste through the existing system without incurring additional costs of taking stuff to the landfill in one's own vehicle, or however a person would get those materials to the appropriate place when the service is offered.
So I'm sympathetic to the letters that we've received and the challenges of those who are mostly part of the garden club. But I'm not going to be supporting this motion because we have had this discussion when Shannon White came on December 18th about the cost of increasing frequency of pickup and the rationale around why we were trying to keep weekly pickup through the times that were particularly sensitive for wildlife interactions. We had a fulsome discussion at that time in my recollection around what the additional cost was going to be. And I think that we made a decision as council at that point that we weren't willing to incur those costs, at least in this budget cycle. And so I would rather not bring that back discussion into the next budget if that's really where I think it would belong. And so one more point there, for those who do have additional garden waste, they can bring it themselves to Carney's or the landfill for free disposal in the compost facilities there. And so there isn't a huge amount of additional cost. There is an avenue that it can be brought forward and be composted free of charge.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson?
Yes, with respect, the focus at the December 18th presentation was on the issue of costs, and rather than the rationale for maintaining regular pickup through the summer. For example, Ms. White's letter elaborates further, and I would have appreciated some of her information during that December 18th meeting. I also think that the inconvenience and issues that arise, including for the neighborhoods, because there's dumping that occurs and fire risks in some situations. The dumping is not an insignificant issue in my neighborhood. So that I think that there is sufficient reason to consider this as an ongoing, persistent issue that will not only curiosity, but real challenges that should be discussed more fully.
So let's not have the debate now.
Yeah.
This is being referred somewhere, and you can either vote for that or you can vote against it. So I'll take comments on the motion on the floor, which is to refer this to Shannon White and an appropriate time in the future to have the conversation, which is the motion that Councillor Anderson made and was seconded by Councillor Briggs. Speak to the motion.
Well, I'm going to support the motion because I don't mind discussing this again. But I think having been on council when we went from every other week to every week during certain periods of time, and we did that to make it more user-friendly and also for wildlife issues. We've extended it since then on some of the shoulder seasons. I don't mind having that discussion in light of the Garden Club, and I know other people in the community who didn't write letters have also commented on that. So to me, I don't mind revisiting this issue. I think it is unrealistic to think it's going to happen for free. And so I think that is going to be the decision. Happy to have a discussion again.
I would have thought this is what we were going to talk about.
I'm happy to have this discussion as well. From my recollection, we did sort of decide that we were not going to address this for this budget, so I'm not looking to have this addressed for this budget, but it is something that I would like to talk about again in the future.
I'm not supporting this motion. I think the time to discuss it is in the next budget cycle. Ms. White had a lot on her plate because we just asked her to ban single-use plastics. And she has to get organics out of the commercial waste stream and the multifamily stream. So the time to discuss this is next fall when we're doing the budget, because we've already put a lot on her plate. So this is a nice to have. We made the decision around wildlife with the input of our wildlife coordinator, and I'm happy with that decision until the fall. Nothing comes for free, so I won't support the motion. I'm going to call it a question.
Clarifying, because I mean, I guess in my mind, I was thinking a fall might be an appropriate time to have that next discussion. So is that not what the mover meant, that, you know, we could have this again in the fall?
My suggestion is at a convenient time in the future when staff may be presenting on a related issue such as the landfill. I don't necessarily think that this is a budget issue. I think that the real conversation people want to have is on scheduling rather than budget. But of course, they're both will be involved.
Long moving then.
Of course you are. You know what? I know this is on Ms. White's radar. Absolutely. It's coming back to us in the fall. Councilor Reeves.
To be considered budget discussions in the fall.
The amendment is to consider this letter as part of budget deliberations in the fall. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councilor Pettengill. On the amendment, all those in favor? Opposed? Wait, was your hand up?
No, I'll go with the motion.
All right. Amendment passes. So on the amended motion, which is to refer this letter to the budget to the fall. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. I love this. Thank you, Council. Never be afraid to put motions on the floor and amend them. I am just fun. It's all good. Thank you, Councilor Anderson. Final one is letter 7. This was sent to us by a resident, I believe, of Squamish, based on a resolution that was passed in Fort Moody. Over to you, Councilor Pettengill.
So I found this to be a very intriguing sounding program in the context of our strategic plan, but I wasn't sure if staff had the mandate or felt it had the mandate or capacity to consider something like this in the context of our strategic plan and direction as it stands?
Mayor Elliott, to be perfectly honest, I can't answer that question right now. Gary's saying,
Sorry, through the Mayor, I think this will be part of the community energy and emissions plan, if at all. I mean, it's going to require change in provincial legislation for this to work. So it's not something that, I mean, we can express interest and we can follow along, but it's not something that we could do. Not until the province enables it anyway. So it's of interest, but it's nothing more than that until the province gets on board with it.
I found it interesting that this is going through the Alberta government, because who we need to lobby is actually the BC government to enable this, and there's mechanisms in the province of Ontario to do similar things, but we don't have the capacity here, so I actually think our effort should be towards the BC government.
So something to consider for UBCM maybe?
Yep,
Yeah.
and the meetings that we request that you see. And I do think it's part of our GHG planning. And Clean BC speaks to retrofitting. And so I'm expecting in 2019 for this government to move forward or provide some information to local government about how they feel that they're going to achieve retrofit of existing homes. So move receipt?
Yeah.
Moved by Councillor Pangil, seconded by Councillor Anderson. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay. On that, we have a recommendation from the March 26th Committee of the Whole that Council endorse the Animal Control Bylaw Amendment Community Engagement Plan as presented at the Committee of the Whole on March 26th. Moved by Councillor Hooker, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any comments? Question, all those in favor? Motion carries. Any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none. Open question period.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Questions about garbage?
Council or staff announcements. I have a few, but everybody else.
So we heard a moment ago that people who have yard waste would be encouraged to take it to Queensway and the transfer station there. My understanding is that's not the type of organic waste they're looking for at that location. It's more oriented towards household kitchen waste. So just want to be clear, if you have surplus yard waste, it should go to landfill. They don't want to see it there. And Mayor Elliott and Councillor Anderson attended an event a few days ago at the West Coast Railway Heritage Park, in which our MP, Pamela Goldsmith-Jones, announced a $985,000 contribution from the West Coast Railway Heritage Park to go towards the MP2 building on the BC rail yards. It was great news, and I look forward to the benefit that that brings to our community and preservation of railway heritage.
Thank you for being on, Councillor.
Thanks for your kind words during the event. Welcome.
Any others? Councillor?
Yeah, just a sad note, actually. I just wanted to note the passing of Lloyd Ingram a few days ago, and Lloyd was in his 103rd year. He was, for people that aren't familiar with him, the person that started a cable company in Squamish, was a successful businessman for many years, and also, after he sold that business, was a very strong supporter of several very important initiatives in our community, Healthcare Foundation being one, Hospice Society being another, and a longtime member of the Rotary Club. And so it's hard to feel sad when somebody passes away in their 103rd year. It was certainly a very full and well-lived life, and certainly one of the builders of our community.
Thank you for acknowledging him. Any others? All right, I've been drinking my tea out of a new mug. So I missed the last meeting because I was sick. But on March 17th, I got to hand out awards at the NORAM ski jumping and Nordic combined competition out at Callahan Valley. And our Sea Sky Nordic was very involved in that. Lots of volunteers out for that. Oh my gosh, I got to go up to the judges' tower and get the bird's eye view of these there was a 14-year-old jumping off the big tower. It was terrifying and exciting. And so that was a real treat. And I just want to acknowledge the hard work of Sea Sky Nordics and their work on the Legacy Park, their work to put on events like the NORAM ski jumping, and this past weekend was the biathlon event. Tons and tons of competitors out there, over 100 in some of the younger categories. So that is a sport. It is great that we have that facility and then we have local volunteers that are making the best use of that facility. So thanks to them and thank you for inviting me. It was great. Council French spoke to the West Coast Railway Heritage Society grant from the government, which is fantastic to protect that heritage. I just got back this afternoon from the Mayor's Caucus in Prince George. And there's a spring caucus and there's a fall caucus at UBCM, which tends to be bigger. But I went to Prince George because I was on a mission to talk to as many mayors up there as possible that were affected by the wildfires in 2017 and 2018. And I learned a lot. Things that you don't hear in the news, impacts that last far longer than the emergency itself. They had a panel, Williams Lake, the vice president of Red Cross. Who else was on that? Mayor of Kamloops, Ken Christian, Walter Cobb from Williams Lake, Adam Davey, who is part of the emergency EOC team in Prince George, and it was fascinating. So I'm looking forward to our evacuation plan coming forward because I'd like to share with council what I learned up there. Not just about the emergency itself, but the impact on mental health. What they're seeing cumulatively after doing 2 years of this. I was able to talk to the mayors who were evacuating their towns, mayors who were receiving those evacuees, and the mayors that people passed by. So the mayor of Velma told me that they were just on the route, that people were going past them on their way to safety. And in 4 hours, their grocery store was emptied and all of their gas stations, they had 4, ran out of fuel, which then created an emergency in their own community because all the traffic was heading in one direction and suddenly they need supplies coming back the other way just to help out their local population who hadn't been evacuated. So all these things that I learned about, just the vulnerability of elderly people and also the most vulnerable in their communities and the impact that this had on them. So it was eye-opening. I'm really grateful that the generosity of the mayors out there that shared their time with me while I was there. And also just getting a better sense of what our role is as councillors and the mayor in a crisis situation. Because oftentimes we're told, like, your job is to stay out of the way, and the mayor shared with me a lot of the positive contributions that they and their councils made during that crisis and how important it was. So I think we do have an important role to play, and we can talk about that when we're talking about our emergency evacuation plans. So that was one topic. I was on a panel with the mayor of Smithers, Mayor Backrack, on the Clean BC plan and the opportunities and implications. And what was really interesting is that it's very hard to focus on climate change when you are focused on just keeping your community going. So the reality and the priority that we may put on it here, it's not that the other mayors don't know it's a priority, but they're just trying to keep their town viable as mills close. And so it'll be interesting to see how the province responds after putting out their plan on Clean BC, because there's not a lot of, there's definitely support for the plan, but also where does this fit in my priorities? And for some mayors, it seems like it's a luxury rather than a requirement, and that's that's hard if we believe that climate change is the crisis and is the emergency. So when I think about the motion that we've put forward at UDCM, Councillor Pettengill, it'll be very interesting to see the debate that comes to the floor. So it was a great learning opportunity. We were able to tour their downtown energy program, which is wood pellets provided by, waste heat from the mill that has gotten rid of boilers in 12 buildings in their downtown, saving a tremendous amount of GHGs. So we got a tour of that, got a tour of the Wood Innovation Center and the Wood Innovation Research Lab up there. And the lab is a passive house, and it's the most airtight and efficient building on the passive house rating in North America. It's really cool. So that was a great tour, and the final panel was on balancing social and economic prosperity. Mayor Dale Bumstead from Dawson Creek, Mayor Val Vandenberg from Langley City, and Sue Wheeler, who's the social development manager at the City of Bloomington. So that was fascinating to understand the connection between prosperity and social prosperity at the same time. So it was great to be part of, and just great northern hospitality. So great, use my time. I'm glad that, and my mom will hate that I'm doing this. I got PG socks. They're very fashionable.
And the Gary envious.
I know. And made me think that we should have socks. It's Squamish. Forget jackets, we need Squamish socks. And I think that's, April 3rd this week, Council is attending Building Bridges through Understanding the Village, which is our training program to help people understand the implications of residential schools and government policies on First Nations people. Very powerful, and all of our new staff that haven't participated in the past will be there. And the mayor's drop-in is this Friday, April 5th from 11 to 12. And Acting Mayor Pettengill will hopefully be joining us.
Excellent.
That's it. That's all I got. Any staff announcements? No. Great. All right. Thanks, Council. Motion to terminate. Moved by Council French, seconded by Council Stoner. All those in favor, opposed, motion carried.